Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric and Vlogmas 2022. Today is the 21st of December. And this time I did check, today is solstice. So winter solstice for those of us that are in the northern hemisphere, summer solstice for those of us that are in the southern hemisphere. And for my daughter, she's experiencing not much of a change either way. It's been such an interesting time having a child so close to the equator. When we compare it to her being in Mongolia the last time, this is just it's such a delight to hear about all of her seasonal or lack of seasonal experiences. So let's go ahead and dig in and grab a fiber. Oh, okay, closing my eyes and reaching in. And I think based upon the tone, because it does show through a little, I think we have a yellow. A chocolate. A cute little present chocolate. And this is lemon drop. This is the last of our yellows. And what a yellow it is. And next to, what was yesterday was this shamrock. Next to that shamrock green. Oh, that's going to be a pretty spin. So we might as well dive in and get started. Opening the fiber up a little and unwinding. So, lemon drop. Oh, that reminds me, lemon drop. One of the things that I have been hoping to make before Christmas is I wanted to make some lemon curd. I have the lemons. I haven't made it yet. There's still a few days before Christmas, and maybe, just maybe, I'll get that lemon curd made. Yesterday, I ended up getting a little baking bee in my bonnet, and I made cookies. Or I know as people in other locations call them, biscuits. These are the cookies that I made are a crisp cookie, although I made a slight alteration to my peanut butter cookie, which can remain a little bit tender, not as crisp because of the amount of fat that you get from the peanut butter. The oils and stuff from the peanut butter can keep it more of a tender cookie. But I made cookies, and I thought today I would talk about my tradition of making Christmas cookies, as in cookies at Christmas. I know a lot of people, at least in the United States and possibly elsewhere, find the holiday season to be a wonderful time to make cookies or biscuits, gingerbread, shortbread, lots of little sweet treats. But one of the interesting things about my tradition of making cookies is it goes back, and I have mentioned in an earlier vlog about my grandmother and her habit of making chocolate chip cookies, freezing them, putting them in the freezer just outside her back door that most everyone came through because no one came through the front door. And how all the visitors, the family and everything knew that those cookies were in the big deep freezer that was in her garage, that they would pass as they would come in to see her. Well, those cookies, I'm sure that they are some slight variation to probably a Nestle Toll House cookie, just a chocolate chip recipe. I don't know how much she tweaked and changed them, but I think the biggest thing is that because she froze them all the time, made them ahead and froze them, they took on a different characteristic than they would have had if they had been just a standard bake them and eat them. And that frozen crispness, that dry, because it basically kind of freeze dried them, and that crispiness, that crunch, that the airiness that came because they had been frozen, that made them unique. And I was so pleased to have figured out how to replicate them. And the main reason I was able to replicate them is that I spent about a year after graduating from college. I spent about a year living with my grandparents. And during that time, I would make the cookies. Now, I had made the cookies before, but it was a little different when I was making them at my grandma's house. And making them with her supervision, you might say, or at least her company. Plus, I was making them all the time. I would make up, 4 times a regular batch. I would scoop them with the smallest of her cookie scoops, which I think is around a half tablespoon, or maybe just a little bit over a half tablespoon of cookie dough. I would put them on the cookie sheets, I'd bake them, and then I'd freeze them, and I would get many times over 100 cookies. And then I would take them, some of them, to work with me. And my office that I worked in loved those cookies. Oh my goodness. And it gave me lots of practice because I was sharing. So by the time I had a family of my own, and Christmas would come, and so Christmas at Grandma's house, yes, I remember as a child there would be pies. But by the time I was a teenager, no one was eating the pies. Grandma had basically, it drafted apart, had stopped making pies, and let's just say no one really took up the mantle of making pies. Some people might bring pies, but no one was making pies. But nobody really ate the pies because we just all wanted Grandma's cookies. So for me, the chocolate chip cookies became part of the Christmas season, of the holiday season. Whether it was Christmas or Thanksgiving, there were 2 things we always wanted: Grandma's potato salad and Grandma's cookies. And sadly, while I have a basic understanding of how she made her potato salad, I've never been able to replicate it. I have figured out the cookies. So, chocolate chip cookies became part of the tradition. And by the time I had a family of my own, that was a tradition I really did want to carry on. And of course, at that time when there was, the 4 of us and, communities to share the cookies with, it was, make a huge batch of cookies, bake them all up, and then have plenty on hand. Well, even if I freeze the cookies I bake now, I have to be careful how many I make, because the truth is, I don't need to be eating that many cookies. My husband doesn't need to be eating that many cookies all in the time. And it doesn't matter if they're frozen and out of sight. If there is a chocolate chip cookie in the house, I just somehow remember where it is and tend to walk past it. I have a cookie kettle, a little copper bucket with a lid that we keep our cookies in. And I'll walk past it. And if I freeze them and I put them in the freezer, I'll still somehow find myself walking past the freezer and getting these cookies. So making a huge batch of cookies is not something that is wise. So one of the things I've been doing is, instead of making the recipes, and I would take the recipe and I'd multiply it by 2 or 3 or 4 times the batch, and I'd print them out. So that's what I would use. Well, now I'm back to not only going back to what a single batch is. In some cases, I am doing a half batch, a tiny batch, because then it gives us the joy of the cookie, but not the overindulgence. But yesterday, I decided it was time to do up Christmas cookies. Now, going back again to when my children were home, and we'd make cookies for Christmas, we wouldn't just make the chocolate chip cookies. We would make chocolate chip cookies, we would make oatmeal cookies, we'd make peanut butter cookies, we would make snickerdoodles, we would make frosted sugar cookies, and we would share them. We would package them up and we would share them with friends and associates, and it made it so that we could have all the cookies we love to eat, just not the huge quantity of them. Well, hearkening back to that tradition, I decided yesterday to make a few batches of cookies. And once again, as I was working in the kitchen, I was video chatting with my son, texting with my daughter. She was occupied, but my son was available, and we video chatted while I worked up 3 different types of cookies, making sure to make the smallest batch for each one of them. And of course, the big key to how small you can go is how small can you go without having to actually divide an egg. It's kind of frustrating to try to figure out how to divide an egg in half. So I took everything down to the smallest amount that would not require me dividing an egg. And I made 3 batches. I made peanut butter cookies. I made chocolate chip cookies. My battery is telling me that it's not happy. So I may not have all of the footage of the yellow. We'll see. But I made chocolate chip cookies, I made peanut butter cookies, and I made more of those butterscotch snickerdoodles because my husband and I have eaten too many of them already, and we really did want to have some going into Christmas. That is the cookie that would be left out for Santa. So, especially since he has to work, he doesn't work on Christmas, but he does work on Christmas Eve. And so, while he's away at work, I want to make sure that he has the sweet treats and the savory treats and the feeling of Christmas that also he could share if the opportunity arises. So I made these cookies, and as I was making them, I was thinking about talking about them in one of these Vlogmas episodes. And I thought, well, let's talk about the peanut butter cookie and the interesting thing I have learned over the years about peanut butter. Now, I know I have viewers from the UK, from Australia, from New Zealand, and the global community. Not only do we have the situation, is it a cookie, is it a biscuit, what do we call these sweet treats? But I have been informed that peanut butter is not something that is universally made the same. And I think my other camera just shut down, but it's okay. I will make sure to have a photo of the yarn when it's done. So peanut butter, though, I have heard tell that American peanut butter is sweet, but that British peanut butter is saltier than ours, and at least I've heard in the past, there's been quite a bit of consternation over the notion of having peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, or I would imagine also peanut butter cookies, because both of those require a sweeter peanut butter rather than a saltier peanut butter. I have never had anything other than American peanut butter. But I can imagine if the peanut butter on your shelf wasn't as sweet as I know our sugar-laden peanut butter in the United States can be, that it could be quite a shock to put something so salty with something so sweet as peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So I kept thinking about this, and I wanted to share this. And I was thinking that regardless of what I pull out of that jar today, I'm going to share with you my peanut butter cookie recipe. For those of you who can source American-style peanut butter and would like to try them. It can be made with crunchy peanut butter or creamy peanut butter. All depends on how much of a peanut crunch you like or don't like. But I have tried to put together this recipe. It is, while it's on the crisper cookie side, I have made a little bit of an adjustment in order to try to have it be a little more tender and cake-like as well. So I wanted to share that as another recipe and another Christmas gift to you. And also just the joy of knowing and remembering the first time I heard about the difference between the peanut butters. The joy of our differences that actually, I think, bring us together. Because as we talk about the differences of our peanut butter, or the words we use, or the kind of foods that we have versus the other, I think it brings us together. And I certainly think that it makes the holidays so much more enjoyable, because now we are bringing together different traditions. And for somebody who grew up where I grew up and has the history of immigrants that my family has, I really have a melting pot of cultures that have merged together to create my Christmas tradition. And it's one that I want to expand every year rather than contract. I want to learn about new traditions and new cultural experiences, and to explore more the ancestors of some of the things that I take for granted as being part of my history, my tradition. And so I am looking at different recipes, and every year I try to expand a little bit my idea of what Christmas is. But I wanted to share this with you. I just thought it was fun. I kept thinking about the vlogs as I was making the cookies, as I was talking with my son, who's been visiting as many German markets as he can possibly visit. And from what I understand, he may actually be able to fit in a couple British Christmas markets as well before the holiday season is over. So it's just, it's a big community that we belong to, if we choose to belong. So it's one of my Christmas gifts to you, if you want to give it a try. And I do know that the way the world is today, if you seek out American peanut butter, you will be able to find it, I think. All right, let's dig into this jar and see what I pull out. I'm going to look at the camera and not at the jar, and I'm going to pull out a green one. And what do we have? It says quilt, knit, or crochet. And I can do that because I was going to come and show here on the camera. I'll show a picture. Actually, I'll just wait, and tomorrow I will show. And I think my camera just finally actually stopped. Maybe it gives me warnings before the battery dies. Either way. I was going to bring it over. I've been working on my capelet, and I have just finished the first skein, which was about 450 yards of yarn. And so I will be, tonight, I will be knitting in order to get the next skein on this capelet I've been working on. So I will wrap up with this and wish you another happy unwinding with fiber and fabric. I hope you're enjoying this holiday season. We are really down to the wire, and I've noticed, excuse me, I have an itch. I have noticed that whether it's my vlog or the others that I'm following, we're down to the wire because more and more people are tuning into the things that are happening in the moment and less of what is happening on YouTube. And I totally support that and understand it. So if I am speaking to you after Christmas, I hope you're still taking time to unwind with fiber and fabric, and happy holidays to wherever you are, whatever traditions you celebrate. I hope that you are enjoying this winter season, this solstice, which, by the way, before I forget, okay, just tacking this on, I started thinking more about that bleak midwinter thing I said in yesterday's vlog. And the truth is the solstice must be the midpoint, really, of winter. Because if we think of it as a peak, both sides are reaching this point. We are at the middle of this season. So this whole calendar season that we have of spring, summer, fall, this calendar seasons that we talk about, I think that must be much like months and such, a little arbitrary. Because, yes, solstice really does represent the peak middle of this transitioning time. Just a weird thought to think about. I don't look into it a whole lot, but for me, yeah, all of a sudden it's like maybe that's why it's called the bleak midwinter, is because we've met the middle of this darkening period before it gets light. Again, we've been getting darker, and now we'll start having the light return. Maybe. Please feel free to comment and share links if you have other information to enlighten me more on this. But now that we've gone over on time, I will wish you the best regardless of what traditions you are celebrating this season. And I hope to see you again tomorrow. Until then, bye.